Are you ready to take your business to the next level? Every day there are countless books and articles that are published offering the key on how to make your business a success. It's easy to feel overwhelmed trying to keep up and run your business. That's why Deb Creer created the Business Power Hour. Keep up on the latest trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. Let the Business Power Hour do the heavy work for you.
Good morning. Good morning. I am Deb Creer, and I am passionate about giving professionals the tools that they need to make themselves and their businesses as successful as possible. And oh my gosh, I am so excited to talk to my guest today, simply because she's a fabulous person, but she sent me the coolest book that she wrote, and we'll be talking about it later. I am so excited to be speaking to my guest. So please welcome Cheryl Lynn Mobley to our program today. Welcome, Cheryl. How are you doing?
I am great. We're a little chilly, but life is good.
I know. You know, I'm in hot Atlanta, and as we're recording this, it's 29 degrees, which it was a lot colder this morning. I'm like, no, we don't do that in Atlanta. Do they not get that?
-5 wind chill.
Yeah.
Not a fan. Not when it was 70 the day before.
Right. I know. And in a couple weeks, we're going to be going, we're hot, right?
Yeah.
So let me tell people a little bit about you, and then we will dive into this. So Cheryl Lynn Mobley is the CEO and founder of reCalibrate, a boutique advisory firm for those who dare to lead, especially those who have what it takes to lead against the current. Her firm identifies choke points so leaders can take their organizations to the next level with minimal angst. In her previous life as a hospital president, her hospital consistently excelled. She reverse engineered what they did to nail 99th percentile performance in their metrics. So the Be99 Guiding Questions Framework was born. Her firm has impacted global brands and mid-market organizations around the world. Again, Cheryl, welcome. How are you doing today, aside from cold?
Well, yeah, aside from cold, awesome. Grateful for power, water, heat, those things that sometimes we take for granted.
Yeah. So, well, I always like to ask my guests how it is that they got to where they are today. So tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Well, I would love to be able to say to people, I had this plan, right? I had it all mapped out, and that would be like a bald-faced lie. And so after I got out of college, I ended up doing a variety of things. The first thing, a friend of mine and I did what you're not supposed to do. You start a business with a friend, right?
Right. And friends and family.
So we started a cleaning business and ended up doing that for about 1.5 years and then selling it to an existing firm. And so that was a fabulous little microcosm and learning experience, because everything you have to do to grow it, keep it, and then of course sell it is kind of a different beast. And we were young at that point, not young anymore, but we were young then, right? And ultimately ended up in healthcare, even though I had been kind of like, all the women in my family were in healthcare in some way. And I'm like, no, not this little gray duck. I don't want to do that. Right? So of course, where do I end up is healthcare. Right? Funny how that works. So I ended up, again, not per se seeking it, doing quality and risk management. And for those who aren't that familiar with healthcare, and I'm way oversimplifying, but quality is really, how do you do things right and be as amazing as you can for the people you care for consistently, right? Just make it look easy. The risk management aside is, how do you keep things from going wrong that could really go wrong and be catastrophic? And that's not just patient focused, but it's also environment focused and storm focused, right? If we can't get food in, we can't get people in.
Right. What if your electricity goes out?
All of those things. What do you do, right? So things happen that you have to be prepared for. So I ended up doing that, and then I was reporting directly to the president of the hospital, and she would add departments to me, right?
And you're so good at this. Now you can do
people to me, and so ultimately I ended up doing operations and the other two. And then we had, in my organization, I was a president in a system, not of the system, right? And so at the time there were about 15 hospitals, and I can't even tell you how many other outpatient related and physician practice, all that good stuff. 23-ish thousand employees at the time. And so they started their first ever hypo or high performance program, high potential program. And so I was one of 30 some odd people in that, right? Drawn from around the system. And I was assigned to the person who ultimately would be kind of third in command of this whole, actually second in command of the whole organization. And I said, I don't want to be president. Don't ask me to be president. I'm not interested in it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm way more passionate about population health, which
Mm-hmm.
isn't talked about as much now, but really the focus that appealed to me was it's proactive.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a lot of people end up in hospitals because of choices they've made
Mm-hmm.
that they could have not made, right?
Right.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
and now things happen, you know,
Mm-hmm.
tractor falls on you, all this
Mm-hmm.
good stuff. I mean, things happen, but a
Mm-hmm.
good chunk of people are in for lifestyle choices.
Right.
The cumulative effect. And I'm like, so
Mm-hmm.
for me, my passion is really around how do we help people not end up in my
Right.
hospital?
Mm-hmm.
You know, how do we do that? And so he comes to me a little bit later and I looked at him, you're going to ask me, aren't you? You are just going to ask
You're
me.
going to want me to be president. Mm-hmm.
You're just, and he did. And he's like,
Mm-hmm.
I know. And normally we ask for 5 years, but if you'd at least just do 2. And I'm like, okay, all right. And so it was fabulous. It really was. I mean, and the thing that amazed me, because my dad had been a VP of SVP, EVP, pick your term, of marketing for a large international organization. And I'm like, do not even talk to me about that, right? Do not talk to me about meeting those kind of metrics. I don't want to do it. And so I thought I would be like, oh no, I've got all this responsibility. I've got all the financials on top of everything else. And it wasn't an issue. And I was like, why is that exactly, Cheryl? You know?
Right.
Kind of an interesting thing that you're not wigging out.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, it's like, no, the quality and the risk to me is the heart of a hospital.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Right. If you don't take exceptional care of people at what is usually a really sucky time in their life, to put it delicately and professionally, then everything else you do doesn't matter. If you make the numbers, who cares?
Right.
You know, that's just not okay. And so having run that side of the business for so long, it was like the dollars were just dollars. And I don't want to cause a heart attack to anybody listening.
Right.
Like, what do you mean?
But the dollars come as a result of that.
Right. But they were not. And so one of the things that we talked about, you know, kind of the frame that I came up with for us is every decision we make needs to lead to one thing. For us being the best place in the entire world, I don't think small, in the entire world, to give and receive care. Period. And that means for the patients, the families, the physicians, the therapists, the nurses, everybody who comes in, the people that clean our rooms, that bring the food, everybody. It's like, that's what we're here to do. And the beauty of it is when you have that focus, a lot of decisions just make themselves.
Right.
And it really allowed our people to go, I'm not even going to bring that as an option because I know it's going to get shot down because it won't move that forward, you know? And so it's like, we had a situation where we were working on something, a really resistant infection that you don't want people to get. Okay. And unfortunately, anybody in a hospital is compromised already. You just are.
Because the air filtration system. Yep.
Well, it just because you're already, your immune system's weakened already. We put lines and things in you, no matter how careful we are. Now there's an extra access point there didn't used to be in your body. Right?
Germs exist.
I mean, it's just so they were working on this and doing amazing work. And then somebody's like, well, but those particular things that we're doing are costing too much money. We should go to something else. And I'm like, no. Right. We don't make decisions like that based on cost. I appreciate.
Are we saving people's lives?
Yeah, you know, it's like, this is, and so I congratulated my team for paying attention to that because a lot of people go,
because you do want them to pay attention to costs.
Yeah. You know, it's like, we have to be cognizant of it because we don't want to be amazing and out of business because we can't run that side of it.
Right.
It's like, but that doesn't drive our decision making. And so it really, I think a lot of times people really get themselves in a bind because they're not incredibly clear and they make too many decisions.
Right.
You know, I mean, it's like, no, that's not even a question. So, you know, and
it should just be an automatic response type of thing.
Yeah. And it's just, it's either in the, you know, I had a kind of a diagram I'd use, but it's kind of a funnel. Right. You know, at the top is anything that can go in it. Right. And if it's automatically out, we don't put it in. So we don't use our precious energy trying to figure out if we should do it or not. And so ultimately I was president for 5 years, to get back to your original question.
So he told you 5 years.
5 years. Yeah. And I did it for 5 years. And the thing for me was we had different people on our team and we had amazing people. So by no means am I saying Cheryl was amazing and that's why it happened. No, Cheryl's human and Cheryl screwed up at times for sure. And I could tell my team, I said, as long as we're breathing, we will make mistakes. We have to learn from them when we don't make the same. Yeah. Right. Okay. We have to be really thoughtful and make as few as possible, but nonetheless, let's not be delusional. And I had a couple of people on on my team that went to different outside events. And they both, and it was fascinating. Within 1 week of each other, they went and they both came back at different times. They didn't hear each other. They said to me, one person said, I like our bubble because it's not good out there. Really not good. And
It's
she goes,
an
my
icky
daughter.
world.
Yeah. She goes, and this was a while ago. And she goes, and her daughter, who was probably 15, 16 at that point, her mom, who had made this comment, drove an hour to get to us, where there was a new hospital opening up 5 minutes away that she could have been easily going to. And she goes, well, Mom, why don't you go closer? And she goes, honey,
Yeah, there's no choice.
So much more to where you work than just travel time. It just don't understand. The other person just said the things that are happening out there would never happen here. I had no idea. And that for me was kind of my kick in the pants. It's like, we've got our system, we're rocking and we're rolling. We know what we're doing. The team is amazing. Absent anything really bizarre happening, we're just going to continue on that path. But there are other people who want to know how to do what we did. And they don't, because some of them were willing to do the work. Some are not. I mean, if you look at general personal development, it averages out to about 2% of the people are willing to say, yeah, I'm going to do what I need to do to get more where I want to be, not do what I don't want to do. And you see that since there's this really strange phenomenon that it's people that run organizations, right? And that work inside them, you have the same thing. So not every leader or team or organization is really willing to do the work. They may say they want to. And that's why you have 90th percentile performance. You're like in the very top, because that's about the number of people that are willing to do that work. Right? Some of us get dragged kicking and screaming into it because you don't have a choice, right? But to really have a passion for it. And so that was really my drive. It's like, okay, there are other people that want to go down this path and they may have tried other things and it's not working. So they get frustrated, they get disheartened and they're like, fine, I've tried and, it's not working. So we're done. And it's like, no,
I'm going to go elsewhere.
Well, or I'm just going to give up trying because I don't think it's achievable. Maybe that person,
they like mediocrity. I'll be mediocre.
Or
average.
Right. Or just get it done. And so the hard thing that was really fascinating when I decided to step away and I formed reCalibrate. I'm like, okay, now I need to create something that captures what did we do differently? Because we worked with a lot of amazing other leaders in my hospital system, but there weren't many that were getting the same kind of results we were getting. And when we talk about 90th percentile performance, for those that don't know healthcare, in the healthcare world, pretty much every hospital is going to have Medicare as somebody who pays them. Right. And so in order for Medicare to pay you, they want to come check out your hospital. And they have things you have to report to them on quality metrics and how things happen and all that good stuff. Well, they should. So they measure you against all the other hospitals that send in data. That they tell you, here's the data that you will send. Here's how you will calculate it. Here's how we want it, when we want it, and all that good stuff. So the 99th percentile performance comes from our standing on those metrics. Right. And this was against, at the time, there were probably about 5,000 hospitals. So we were consistently in the 99th percentile. You
done good.
We did good. We had amazing people. And so if you have that kind of an expectation, and that's just me anyway, right? I'm like, well, if we're going to do it, we're going to rock it. Otherwise, let's just go back to bed. Right. I mean, I don't care whether it's healthcare, whether it's, energy, whether it's tree planting, it doesn't matter. Whatever it is, your thing, go ahead and rock it. So, but I'm like, well, what? Because people would say to us, y'all make it look easy. What do you do? And so when I left, I'm like, okay, what is it? Because I knew a lot of other people. I'm like, what did we do differently? And again, not just me, an amazing team of people. It was required all of us. It's like, what did we do differently? What were our expectations? How did we communicate? What did we focus on? What did we ignore? And so that's what led to the Be99 Guiding Questions Framework. And I'm not going to do this well. I never do. But it looks like this.
Okay.
All right. So it's
pie chart-ish.
Pie chart-ish. And it's a wheel. Originally, I called them drivers. And I'm like, no, I think it's more accurate to call them puzzle pieces, because I would have people go, well, which one do I need to do? And I'm like,
no, they're not standalone.
It's like, no, you don't get to just rock one. Sorry.
Right.
If that's the case, then a lot of us could do it.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing when I designed it, these different puzzle pieces have different layers, right? So for each one, there's a question that the leader of the organization needs to ask under that puzzle piece. Then there's one that an individual contributor, whoever they are, needs to ask and answer. One that teams do, and one is kind of the organization as a whole. And so when I was doing that, I'm like, okay, so again, what did we do differently? And so this is the result of that. It is on my website for anybody to go look at. So it's not like held like, you know,
right. And we're going to provide a link to it.
Yeah. So that is certainly there for people. I've had people say, wow, those are hard questions. I'm like, well, yeah, I mean,
yeah, do you want it to be easy? Really?
You know, but people have said, well, I've used it for me personally too. And I'm like, awesome. Now, the thing that has been fascinating to me though, and that's true for any of us who create something, we know what we're thinking, right? You know, and so when I've worked with clients and they've come up with some really unique interpretations of what I'm getting at, and I'm like, now this is fascinating. Because the way you're answering it is diagnosing the problem right now. Right. You know, just because you've taken it in a really unique way, that's not at all what's accurate. What generally happens is that people take it about what they want to have come true.
Right.
It's very inward focused. And I'm like, I don't want to be rude, but I'm not worried about you at this point.
Right.
You know, we exist to do something outward in the world. And these questions are framed toward that end. So when people answer, well, our department wants to be number one. I'm like, oh, okay, right. Well, that's okay.
Yeah, you really don't want to be number two. I mean, that's the whole thing. It's like,
but it's just but it's very much, it's not about what they're existing to deliver. And in some industries, that's really clear, right? Healthcare, it's really clear. You know, anything to do with nuclear industry, anything like, you know, it's really clear, right?
Yeah, there is no gray area.
But in other organizations, I think people they've lost that link. We've had too much conversation, and this is where I think we've gone really astray.
Right.
It's about me. I want to be happy. I want to be this, and I want to be that, and you should be everything to me. And you said something, and I got so offended.
Yes.
And now I'm triggered. And I'm like, when did this become about you?
Right.
And I don't mean to say that, I mean, we cared deeply about it. We wouldn't have been 99th percentile performance based on what they said about working with us if we didn't. Like, but that's not why we're here. And it's like, yes, I want you to enjoy what you do. Yes, I want you to grow. Yes, I want you to develop, but I did not take you to raise.
Right.
You know,
I'm not your mother.
This is not about meeting every need and having you always have things go your way. That's not possible. And we didn't have any issue with that. But as I have, you know, kind of been working with people and looking at this, and I'm like, dangerous road you're going down.
Right.
And you see it now. You see more of the fact that it's kind of become accepted that, well, I'm just going to take offense at that. And I see people
and people blame millennials. No, it's everybody.
Well, it's become a thing, right? And unfortunately, and this is one thing I learned, I think anybody who's been alive has learned this, that bad things spread way faster and with way less effort than something that's good.
Right.
I don't care whether it's gossip.
We like to gossip, right?
You know, I don't know why. I mean, that may be part of it, but it's like bad information is like wildfire. Good information, you feel like you could ride up an escalator backwards with a sign, it's flashing and people don't see it, right? So it's just one of those things that you just have to pay attention to. But I would love to lay claim to this quote, but it's not mine. But once I stumbled across it, I use it ruthlessly. You know, and pretty much with every client, I use this more than once. What you permit, you promote. And a lot of us don't understand that by not taking action, we're blessing something.
Right.
You know, and it's like, well, that is a decision. You can't tell me you didn't make one, you just did.
Right. You made the decision to not do anything. Right.
And when you don't, when people see other people doing certain things and it seems cool, oh, okay. Right. I guess that's okay then.
And it could be something as simple as this person came in late. And nobody said anything about it. Right. And so why am I trying to get there early or even on time? They didn't get in trouble for being late. So I'm going to be late.
Yeah. And so it is so, and to your point, it's often things that at the beginning of it don't look that detrimental.
Right. You're like, oh, Cheryl was 5 minutes late.
But it's amazing. It really is a slippery slope. And when I was younger, I didn't really understand that. It's like, oh, you're just making a big deal about whatever, and now I'm like, no, those first steps wrong.
Right. Because 5 minutes becomes 10 minutes, becomes I show up at lunchtime.
And then the snowball effect of these things. Because to your point, it's not just the person who does the action that's not okay. It's everyone else who sees it appearing to be okay.
Right.
So that choice to not deal with it spread so fast through the organization. And since we are humans, you have this going on like this all over the place. And I had somebody, she's an amazing leader, and I was talking to her. She was a senior leader in a billion-dollar company. And she goes, I love the sound of Be99, but it sounds exhausting.
We have to be good all the time.
And then she goes, but I guess it's more exhausting constantly dealing with stuff.
Right.
And I said, so it's really, is there energy involved? Yes. When you first start the journey, is there more work? Yes.
And it might be painful, right?
But it's like, but it gets to the point, and this was a learning for me. So for any of your folks listening who get to this point, I want to assure them it's not a bad point to be, because I was worried. So I had always, especially when I was doing the quality and the risk, there are always deadlines, always reports, always this, and some stuff you just can't do until right at the bitter end because you don't have the data, right? So there's always a bit of a crunch.
Right.
So you can have all the basic data, but you still can't assemble it. Right? So there's always that kind of built-in, Over time in the role as president, I got to the point, I'm like, I don't really have anything to do right now. I'm like, what's wrong? And I'm like, no, it took me a while to go, no, that's because you were developing people to do the things you were doing. And they're doing now. Right. And so, but for a while I was like, what's wrong? And I'm like, no, what's right here? And so when you truly start to develop your people to the point where they can pick up a lot of these things, and it doesn't mean that lasts forever, right? It's not like, oh, I had nothing to do. I certainly did, but it was such a different feeling. And it was so awesome to see their joy.
Right.
As they were able to develop and dig into gnarly things that somebody else might go, oh, no, that's too big for you. And I'm like, step on
and
in.
to honor them by letting them do that.
And so, the people that want to work, want to learn and grow and play with new things.
Right.
And if you don't give them that, they're going to go somewhere else or just check out. Right. It's like, fine, I'm going to just push the
Why should I keep trying so hard for no reason?
So if it's not recognized, rewarded, and so there's a lot of learnings as you go. I mean, but that one really, that shook me for a while. I'm like, okay. But then I'd be around other people and like, wow, you're coming up with all this amazing stuff. It's great. You're like the poster child for this. And I'm involved at the corporate level as well, because you have a lot of corporate level initiatives at that point. So it was just a really interesting time to see. So I know for some people it sounds harsh when I'm like, we don't exist to make everybody that works with us happy. That's not why we're here. Now, do we exist to make them miserable? Of course not.
Right.
Right. But in this time where we have gone, I think of a teeter-totter a lot, where the teeter-totter has just slammed on the ground now, where we've gotten it so backwards. And I see everything that's speeding up in not a good way as a result of those, those choices, those allowances, what we're permitting. And it makes everything hard. I had another leader talk to me one time. He goes, I'm just exhausted, and I'm like, well, yeah, because everything is really hard.
You're spending all your time putting out fires.
Yeah. And that's exhausting. I mean, whether you call it putting out fires or playing whack-a-mole, the feeling is the same, right? And you're not doing what you exist to do. And it's like, well, yeah, that's going to require you at some point to, to say, line in the sand, things are changing. Because here's the gig. If it sucks to be you,
Mhm.
again, delicately,
Mhm.
everybody that works with you feels the same.
Right. Yeah.
Right?
It's,
You know,
yeah.
I mean,
Mhm.
it's not just it sucks to be you and
Mhm.
everybody else is thrilled.
Mhm.
If they are, you certainly don't want them around. Right.
Mhm.
You know,
Right.
I mean,
Mhm.
and so it's one of those things that I see too many leaders right now being held hostage.
Mhm.
And the problem is they're the ones doing it to themselves.
Mhm.
You
Right.
know, and you have to be willing. I had somebody say to me once, she goes, well, what, but our goals, we need to hit our targets, and I'm getting really frustrated. And I said, well, here's a gig. I said, you may need to revisit your goals.
But the consultant set them
yeah,
for us.
yeah, you know, and I'm like, you can't, it's the height of foolishness to act like you set a goal once
Mhm.
and it's all good.
Right.
Because even if we didn't have this crazy disruption, nutso stuff happening right now,
Mhm.
that just makes it all the more impossible.
Mhm.
But I
Right.
had somebody say to me once, she was working with me, and she was a person that just started reporting to me, and she's like, well, I don't get what the problem is. I'm doing the same job the same way I was 20 years ago.
Huh. Yeah.
And I'm like, well, let's talk about that.
Yeah.
Right?
Let's kind of think about this.
So is anything in your life the same as it was 20 years ago?
Two.
Yeah. 6 months, 2 days,
Mhm.
pick your thing,
Mhm.
So, I mean, it's just one of those things that we
Mhm.
get kind of, oh, well, bigger is best.
Right.
Bigger bottom line is
Mhm.
best. And it's like, with everything going on, that may not be possible. And so
Mhm.
why are you trying to kill yourselves on
Right.
this hill?
Right.
Now, I'm not naive. We all have bosses,
Mhm.
right? I had a boss I reported to. I had my own hospital board that I
Mhm.
reported to.
Mhm.
I had the board over the system. So I'm
Mhm.
not saying you get to just, unless you work for yourself, you get to do
Mhm.
whatever you want. I'm not saying that. And that becomes the onus on the leader to
Mhm.
be willing and able to present logically what's going on and what
Mhm.
needs to shift, because that's
Right.
part of what you get paid to do.
Mhm.
And some of your listeners will find themselves where the leaders don't want to hear it.
Mhm.
Well, then that's on you.
Then they're not a good leader.
Leader, yeah, and
Mhm.
it's like if people are trying to act, I mean, the phrase the phrase I've used with more than one of my clients is, you're playing ostrich and Russian roulette at the
Mhm.
same time. This is
Mhm.
not good, right?
No.
It's
No.
just really not good, because you're
Mhm.
spending so much energy not
Mhm.
dealing with this.
Right.
And once
Mhm.
we deal with it, you are going to be stunned
Mhm.
at how much better you feel,
Right.
because you will realize you lived, right?
Mhm.
It's
I
okay.
survived. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Mhm.
now the weight of that
Mhm.
you've been carrying for whether it's days or years
Mhm.
can be lifted,
Mhm.
And so it's just, you always want to go, just please,
Mhm.
come on, just
Mhm.
come on. Let's just,
Mhm. Mhm. Right.
move down this path. You will
Yeah.
feel so much
You know,
better,
and people, let's be honest, they don't want to be, for the most part, mediocre or even
Mm.
average. We want to be good.
Good. Yeah.
We want to do the best job we
Yeah.
can. All of those things. And so, yeah, when it's just like, okay, I saw something somewhere that said, companies are happy with being average.
Good. Yeah.
Ugh.
Yeah.
You
I'm
know,
not a fan. Yeah.
below average you can bring up, right?
Right.
Or close down. I mean,
Yeah.
there's but yeah, being average, who wants to be average? I mean, that's no. When I get my grades, I want to be an A, maybe even an
Yeah.
A plus, right?
Plus, yeah. Well, and it is ironic you mentioned that, because I know there was a study a few years ago where they asked people, and I don't remember what it was in reference to.
Mhm.
Maybe it was driver, student. Well, it
Mhm.
doesn't really matter. Are you above average, average, or below average?
Mhm.
Well, everyone plays themselves above average.
Right. Oh yeah, it doesn't matter
Well,
what it is. We're going to
it's
say we're
like,
above average. Mhm.
that's not statistically possible.
Mhm.
Right.
Right.
So I think we've got that disconnect, but I honestly see
Mhm.
so much exhaustion with the
Mhm.
people that we're working with,
Mhm.
that they just can't muster up I just
Right.
can't. And I'm like,
Yeah, they're
you're
doing
so
just
exhausted
enough to get by.
you're so exhausted by what
Mhm.
you've tried to do that you've
Mhm.
given up,
Mhm.
and you do need some help we can leap out of this hole,
Mhm.
or you can stay in it and pull the covers over you. I mean,
Right.
but just prepare to continue to
Mhm.
be exhausted.
Mhm.
And so, because we all get it. I mean, I know
Mhm.
if I'm wasted, I'm exhausted. I'm
Mhm.
like, don't ask me to spell and,
Mhm.
I mean, that would be like a book beyond me at that point.
Mhm. Mhm.
But when you live there, you don't realize you can't spell
Right.
and. Yeah.
Mhm.
And so it's just kind of one of those things, whether it's somebody that you know, listening to your program, somebody else, you know, family, friends, outside person, doesn't matter, but somebody else who can kind of go, just saying, because I'm not in it, right? You know, and that can be a huge help. And that's one of the nice things with the framework, with the questions, is you can look at those and kind of go, oh, okay, right.
Right.
So it helps to kind of reframe. There's two things, and everybody knows what you pay attention to matters. That doesn't mean we pay attention to the right things, but if you ask us, every one of us will say, yes, what you pay attention to matters. What I see people not connecting enough is what you don't pay attention to also matters.
Right. And sometimes it matters more.
Right. But we don't, we don't.
But we're back to being that ostrich, right? No.
Yeah.
If I don't think about it, it doesn't exist.
Yes. It's cute when it's a puppy sticking its head under the bed, little tushes out there just a wagging like crazy. I can't see you, you can't see me. It's like, it's not the way this works.
No.
Really.
Yeah.
And I get it, because people are right now so exhausted. And it's like, well, but you're going to continue to be exhausted if you don't say enough already.
Right.
And most of us will not like, but resonate with the reality that we're usually only willing to change when it's more horrible to stay where we are.
Right.
Than it is to make the effort. It's like, you're making effort either way. Don't confuse that.
Right. So why not do it as more of a positive thing, as opposed to, oh my God, I have to do this.
So I have to go to work again. I have a book that I gotten years ago, and the title is fabulous then, and it's even better now. It goes, "Thank God it's Monday."
I like that.
Right. And how many people genuinely don't feel that?
Probably a great portion.
Yeah. And it's like, it doesn't need to be that way. It really, really doesn't. Because I've worked in organizations that suck the life out of me. I have. And so I know what it feels like. And I know what those leaders did. And I learned so much from them, because I'm like, when you did that, I felt like this, the organization responded this way. I don't ever want to have a part of that.
Right.
And so you can learn a tremendous amount if you are right now blessed with working under someone who's not so great. Learn from it.
Right.
So what is it that you're doing that's making me respond this way, making me feel this way? Now, to be accurate, you don't have to feel that way, but we all have things that strike us. So it's like, so and a lot of your people aren't going to be able to go, I have a choice as to how I respond here, but that's exhausting too. But you can learn so much from leaders that aren't awesome, because you're going, I don't want to do what you do, and I want to avoid any possible permutation of it, because I see what it did to me.
Right.
And so it's a learning opportunity not to waste. Doesn't mean you stay there forever, but there's a lot you can learn in that situation. And I've had more than one that I've learned from.
Oh yeah. Yeah. We've all, probably everybody has been in that situation where, it was the, oh God, I got to get up and go to work. And how many people by like noon on Sunday are dreading it? And I don't care if they're the lowest level or the C level. If you're thinking, now we're not Pollyanna folks, it's not going to be, roses and whatever's every single day. And it doesn't matter what industry you're in. I mean, things happen.
Yes.
And, and I also, same thing. If you are a solo entrepreneur, if you're thinking, I got to do work stuff.
Yeah.
Now, if that's, I have to do invoices. I hate doing invoices. And, but it's good to have invoices
to do. Yes.
I know, and oh my gosh, when I discovered that QuickBooks would automate it, bells went off, right? And so, but yeah, when I actually had a client call and say, you haven't invoiced us in a while, I was like, and it was one of those, I like working for them. I was having a great time. It was just one of those then. And I looked, I was like, oh yeah, it's been about 6 weeks. And so, but yeah, I mean, there are things that we don't like doing. Maybe it's your month-end reports or, God forbid, hiring and firing, all of those things. I mean, it's not hunky-dory all the time.
No.
But the key is we want more hunky-dory than blah.
And there's things, I mean, there will always be things that happen,
Right.
right? I mean, in the hospital setting, you have surveyors show up.
Right.
You know, you have to deal with it.
You have COVID.
Right? Yeah, you know, people come in with a new disease that everybody's got to figure out how to deal with. I mean, things will happen.
Right.
The beauty of having an organization that is hanging at the 99th percentile is you are in a way better position to manage and navigate it without exhaustion and to make better decisions. Because like I said, there are times when I'm exhausted. I'm like, maybe filing is about all I should do right now.
Right. Yeah. Let's not trust me to make the really good decisions.
You know? But if you live there, that's when it really becomes dangerous. And I see too many leaders living there and they lose the ability to recognize they're there.
Right.
And that's when you get kind of numb to it and you get real challenges.
Yeah.
You know, so.
You know, and I think COVID obviously brought out a lot of that, you know, where we were able to see, okay, the organization was not set up so that it could survive, you know, and you know, I used to do crisis management planning. So some of this to me was like, wait a minute, you know, now we never could have foreseen COVID. I mean, let's be honest.
Shutting down and
I mean, you know, and remember how we all laughed when they said, "Hey, we're shutting down for 2 weeks." Yeah, right. We're shutting down, and it's only going to be 2 weeks. I don't think so. You know, but yeah, I mean, it was you know, and it didn't. I mean, like there's a hospital right near me. In fact, I just had to mute my microphone because there was a helicopter going over. I mean, I'm close enough that you know that it was going to be on my mic, but you know, they got through it really well, and it was because they had procedures in place before it happened, and then when it actually hit, they changed people. I mean, it was like, okay, well, this is who is doing this normally. We need somebody different right now. And you know, and that right now person was the best right now person for it. But you know, for one thing, they recognize that. I mean, how many people during COVID kept stumbling along with it's only going to be 2 weeks? You know, we're 2 years into this, but it's only going to be 2 weeks.
2 weeks, yes.
But yeah, the organizations that kind of had a lot of that strategically in place knew how to survive. And some of it was just simple things like, you know, their employees could work remotely.
Right.
You know, everybody had laptops or we could get them laptops. You know, I was talking to somebody who, you know, so the world shut down in March, right? In May, they still did not in their home office have a desk chair or a desk. Now, part of that was the whole supply and demand thing, right? You know, because everybody needed those. But she's like, yeah, it's really hard for me to work because I don't have the right stuff.
I'm sitting on the floor, on the couch. You know,
you know, and the cat climbed on me and just ruined my report. You know, and so some of this is that pre-planning. Now, like we said, you know, no, you cannot plan for COVID, but you can. I used to tell people, you know, plan on what if the sprinkler system goes off in your building? What if the power goes off? I'm from Colorado. What if, you know, you can't get to the office for a while? What would you do? Right. And then more importantly, what are the critical functions? You know, it was very interesting. I was reviewing critical functions with a company one time. And, you know, the whole thing of, okay, if Cheryl's not here, what happens? Right. You know, and I remember one of the ones, and this was a big financial services company. And the attorneys of all people were saying, we're really not all that critical. You know, yeah, we do have important things that we do, but nothing that is absolutely positively must be done today type of things. And then one person kind of, you know, sheepishly puts their hand up and they said, well, you know, there's that report that we have to file on the last day of every month. Yeah. And I said, all right, tell me about that report that you have to file on the last day of the month. And they said, well, if we don't file it with the state yanks our business license. And I said, critical function. And then they said, and only Bob can do that. And I'm like, no, you know, it's great that Bob has that job security, right? Yes. But Bob needs several other people to know how to do it.
And the authorization and the password and the credentials and the approval.
You know, all of those things. And so it's about that if it's going well right now, why? What are the reasons why it's going well? Well, we know that this and this and this and this have to happen. Or, this is, all of those things. And I think so many companies never stop to look at that until there is a catastrophe.
Until there's a break. I mean, that's one of the things when I took a rafting trip when I was going to be gone. And I went to my boss and I said, okay, here are the people that can pick up my work until you can replace me. Here's where everything is.
Right.
And she's like, why in the
world? If I drown
on a vacation that you think you might not survive? And I go, I expect to survive. I expect to be back, but people do die on these trips. And I don't want to leave the hospital in a lurch because no one else in the hospital does this at the time, And so I made sure, obviously, by the time I left, there were plenty of other people that could do the pieces parts. But yeah, we don't tend to. And if you're running really fast, you're like, well, I don't have time for that.
Right.
It's like, well, yeah, you're going to make time when it breaks big time, when it doesn't.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah. That's one of the beautiful things in healthcare is that you're required to do a FMEA. Is the failure mode effect analysis.
Right.
Which,
the big what ifs.
Have no clue. Yeah. And it's like, well, pick something really critical that's working fine. And then think of all the ways it could break.
Right.
And what you're going to do to keep it from breaking. And I always love that because it really, and it's fabulous if you're doing that as an organization, if you have people that aren't in your specialty to help you ask the questions.
Right. Because they're going to come up with the big what ifs.
Right. And because they don't have well, everybody knows, or, that's just how we do that. I mean, they're like, well, what about? I mean, that was one of the things when I was doing quality and risk, I could talk to the clinical people because I'm not clinical. And they were like, well, everybody knows. And I'm like, well, that's really awesome, except the policy doesn't say what you just said, everybody knows.
Right.
And so if I have to go to court to defend what we did, there's a disconnect, and that's not okay.
Right. Yeah, not good. Not good. We're going to get in trouble.
Yeah, it's just this is not the way we're going to do this. So yeah.
Right. And it's always interesting because, like I said, in my example, Bob thinks that's great job security, right? He's the only person that can do whatever it is. That's great for Bob, but it also might mean Bob can never go on vacation, right?
Well, exactly. Yeah.
And so it's not always good for Bob. But yeah, there should never be, unless you are a solopreneur. There should never be one person who has, shall we say, the keys to the kingdom. Because things happen. And now granted, some people don't care. Let's be honest about that. But for the people who really do care about the organization, they want people to at least have basic knowledge. Okay, well, I can't do I don't know how to do the report that Bob does, but I know where he put the instructions for somebody else to do it.
There
things
are
like
instructions.
That. Yes. Yeah. Bob actually wrote down the instructions, right?
Which is cool of Bob. Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's there. Well, you mentioned going on your rafting vacation. Yeah. You do a lot of vacations, and I want to talk about one that you did in South Africa, which actually caused you to write this book. And for those of you who are listening, this book is an incredible book. It is called Face to Face, a guide to leading more skillfully in times of great disruption and uncertainty. That said, this is a coffee table book. Oh my gosh. It is an inch thick. It has fabulous pictures of your trip to South Africa, but it's got great information. So, tell us, first of all, why did you decide to write this book?
Again, like my story of becoming president, it was not planned. This was to be a vacation that, in theory, I returned to live from. Sounds familiar, right?
In the bush.
Yeah, so it's in South Africa. It's like riding inside the zoo, basically, because we were inside the walls, as it were, the fencing for all of the animals that live naturally in that area.
And are thinking, oh, look, lunch.
That's coming to us. How cool is that? A moving buffet, And so it was something that was just going to be a vacation. And then on the, through the book, the way I organized it, because I don't know about anybody listening, but I'm so tired of the typical leadership book.
Right. Here's the problem. Here's how we solve it.
I don't want to, please, I haven't been that bad. Don't make me do this. Right. And so I'm like, if I'm going to do this, then I want it to be something that's really engaging, and valuable, that it was worth your time. Because as I say to my folks all the time, we're a finite resource.
Right.
And if I choose to do one thing, I'm choosing not to do something else. So if you choose to spend time to read this book, you're choosing not to do something else. So it should be worth your time, right? Not in a painful way, but worth your time. And so I just was going to do vacation. And then I'm like, the very first gig as I'm going through the journey, I'm at one of the sightings that I detail in the book. And I'm like, the leadership parallels here are amazing. Our leader, our guide, Ray, is fabulous. Our team dynamics, our organizational outcomes, this is like, wow. Right. So I thought, well, I'll just do a couple blog posts, that'll be fine. And I am a photographer, so all the images in the book are mine. I did not take any from horseback for a couple reasons.
And most of the adventures were on horseback.
Yes. Yeah. We had a few where we were out in, what shall we say, open air Land Rovers.
Right. We've seen those. Yeah.
Yeah. But for the most part.
Where the lion can reach and just pluck you out.
Yes. I actually had one walk so close I could have touched her back. It would have been the last thing I ever did, but I could have stroked her back.
She would have plucked you out. Yes.
Yes. She would have said, honey, if you want to be dinner for me and the babies, that's cool. Right. But and then after the first full day, I'm like, oh, shoot, this is a book. And this is my first book. I figured my first book would be about the Be99.
Right.
And it's not that that's not woven in there, but it's like, it's going to be about this. And so I was like, okay, well, if I'm going to do this, this is how it's going to be laid out. So literally, we were out twice a day, sometimes 2-4 hours in the morning, usually 2-ish hours at night. And I would try desperately to remember everything that happened. And then I would run back almost to the room and I would sit there and I would just write and try and capture everything that happened. Because you forget, it all runs together. Was the monkey stealing the toothpaste on the first day or the third day? I don't remember, what happened. And the photographs were it was such a gift to be able to take those. But the way the book is laid out is the beginning of each chapter is really just a straight up story, as engaging as I was able to make it.
Right. As to what happened that day.
Is to put people in the saddle, as it were, right? Or in the Land Rover seat. And then the second part of each chapter is the leadership principle that I pulled from that encounter that I'm choosing to share. And I thought, but I still want more. And being a glutton for punishment, I thought, I'm going to go find a boatload of other amazing leaders. And I'm going to ask them how they live out that principle by asking them.
Because we love examples.
Questions. Yeah, And so I interviewed 25 other leaders from around the world. And I intentionally wanted a mix. So EVP at Unilever, right? And somebody who at the time had a catering business that only hired people who were coming out of homelessness or prison as employees. I mean, diversity. So there's nothing, a lot of leadership books are great if you're just like them, whoever them is.
Right.
And so
we're not all Elon Musk or Richard Branson or whatever.
But that's what a lot of the books are written as if. And so that's kind of the beauty of the Be99 is it's relevant whoever you are. As a company, we've used it with international pharma companies. We've used it with energy companies. We've used it with practices. I mean, so it really doesn't matter. And so the book, I wanted to be the same way. It's like, whoever you are, I want you to go, oh yeah. That's something that we really need to pay attention to. So let me go see. And I was very clear with the people I interviewed. I'm like, whatever you do, do not give me an answer like teamwork is very important.
Yes.
I said, because I will go, no, right? I said, no. And so it's very, very concrete examples with kind of a different focus. Again, it's not the typical thing you're going to see. To your point, it is a coffee table book, literally. I mean, it's photographic quality paper.
Oh yeah. I mean, I get a lot of books because, and they're these nice books that are paperback and they're on my shelf. No, this is a coffee table
book. I had one of the people, she said to me, one of the first people that picked it up, she says, I'm sitting in a meeting. I'm looking at the images of the cheetah. I'd rather be with the cheetah than in this meeting. And this is a VP, right?
But I'd rather about to be eaten.
This is the middle of all COVID, and we were all, so sick of online meetings we couldn't stand ourselves. But it's designed to be engaging. It's designed to be enjoyable, and it's just been. I have been so delighted by the
Mhm.
feedback. You know, when people have gone, this is just not like the others, and this
Right.
is so nice, because
Mhm.
that's what I want to hear.
Mhm.
Because it was a lot of work. I
Yeah, I could tell. I mean,
way,
yeah.
way
Mhm.
underestimated. I mean, first there's the learning curve.
Mhm.
And then there's I thought the interviewing, finding people to interview that I wanted to interview would be
Mhm.
tough. That was fine.
Mhm.
But trying to figure out who to use for what, because there was so much great stuff.
Right.
And
Yeah,
then when I
which
got,
chapter, which
right,
message
they're
do they
gonna
fit in?
exactly, what's the best place to
Mhm.
put them that's really, something that people
Mhm.
haven't heard before, that they can go,
Mhm.
ooh, I can do that.
Mhm.
Or I can do that and tweak it a little bit.
Mhm.
I mean, it just about ate me for lunch,
Mhm.
and then when I got it back from the person who did the layout, and I'm like, it's 200 plus pages. Okay,
Mhm.
there's a reason it ate me for lunch, right?
Mhm.
But it's likewise, it's designed to give
Mhm.
people something that's really enjoyable and kind of
Mhm.
like, ooh.
Mhm.
And then what can I do with this? And what
Right.
are the things that we
Mhm.
really need to be paying
Mhm.
attention to? And the things that we're dealing with right now. Again,
Mhm.
it's disruption and uncertainty.
Mhm.
I
Right.
I went on the trip in 2019,
Ah.
and talk about now, right? I
Mhm.
mean, when we
Mhm.
look, when we thought things were funky then, I mean,
Mhm.
the dial's been like cracked all the way.
Yeah. The dial got broken off.
Oh yeah, it's like boom,
Mhm.
and see it off on the road
Mhm.
someplace. So it is, I've just been really excited by being able
Mhm.
to get it into people's
Mhm.
hands so that they can enjoy it
Mhm.
and use it
Mhm.
at the
Mhm.
same time. Because you don't often get both of those. It's either
Right.
enjoyable and it's a
Mhm.
break, or it's like, I should read the textbook. And I'm
Yeah.
like, no,
Yeah.
no.
Yeah. It's like, oh, is there going to be a
I have,
quiz?
yeah, exactly. I have to read pages
Mhm.
1 to 65.
Mhm.
It's like, no, no, no.
Mhm.
So yeah, so that's a bit about
Yeah.
the book.
I love it, and it's funny because I typically skim the books because
You can't read them
yeah,
all. Yeah.
and so I'm gonna have to go back and read
Yeah.
this in detail because it really was one of those where okay, I'm gonna skim it enough so that I can talk about it.
Got it. Yeah.
And I on the program I'm not going to talk about somebody's book if I haven't experienced
Right.
it.
Yeah.
But yeah, and especially now that I have met you,
You.
then now it'll make more better sense
Sense. Yes.
when I read stuff. And so I'm really looking forward to going back to that. And so that's going to be great.
Yeah.
It really is it's something like you said, you read it and you can put it into practice.
Yes.
It's not the New Year's, resolution thing where, I'm going to do this for, I think yesterday was
3
the
days or
official
something.
day of New Year's resolutions are officially broken.
Yeah.
I saw that. I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we put up with it for 15, 16 days or, whatever. And then we're like, yeah,
Then we're done.
whatever.
Yeah.
And I think that comes back to the whole premise of, we go back to what maybe it wasn't working, but it's what we know.
It's familiar, and it
Yeah.
doesn't require the
Yeah.
same level of effort to jump the
Yeah.
tracks.
And I mean, how many times when we bring up something at a company and it can be, it's the simple basic question, why do we do it this way?
Right. Yes.
And the response is because it's the way we've always done it.
Yeah. It's one of my
Like 20 for 20 years, right?
Yeah.
And there sometimes may actually be very valid reasons for that.
Yes.
But yeah, in so many cases, it's like, but we do it this way, but then we have to spend twice as much time fixing it. Because we didn't, it was okay, well, we do it this way. Or, back to it, yeah, but we're providing mediocre or average. So,
And that exhausts me.
yeah,
Yeah.
why do we want to
It's
be
not
like that?
okay. Yeah, that's just not my gig.
Right. And so you have developed this Be99 Guiding Questions Framework, and and we'll have the link to it in the website, and you have very graciously and generously offered to talk with people who have gone through it, and so we'll have that information in there. But we've only got about 5 minutes left, and so tell us more about what you do and what the Be99 questions and all of that. So give us a little bit more detail.
Yeah, so the goal is really for reCalibrate is to help organizations who are willing, quite frankly, to do the work, to live as in 99th percentile in their own space. Because it doesn't matter what you do. Like I said, we've worked with clients all over the spectrum, and we may have worked with a sales team who's they're hitting a wall. Because their leaders came in and said, we just need to think differently. because what we're doing is not working.
Right.
Or we had an energy firm that wanted to do an exit. And they're like, we've got to get a lot of things in place before we're able to do that.
Right.
And they thought, well, maybe 5 years will be ready. Well, in 16 months, they had money in hand and they were out the door.
Ooh, nice.
Right. Because of the work that we did building on the amazing things they had already done. Right? So it's really around, if you want to live in the 99th percentile space, and either you've got so many things running that you can't do it by your own self right now, because to me, it's really about buying speed, because you're going, okay, you've got a process, y'all have something that's working, help me with it so I can run with it with minimal effort, because right now that's what we need. We need the results as painlessly as possible, and we need to keep them. It's back to your point of the, well, I did the thing for 14 days. How come the results didn't last for 8 years? Don't know. That's amazing.
Because on day 15, I went,
you just don't do it. So really the actual work that we do all drives around the framework, but where we land depends completely on the challenge people are having. So it's not a matter of me saying, oh, well, this is where my team says you should put your oil well. If you don't know that, you have problems we cannot help you with, right? We're looking at, if you want to get somewhere you're not, and this living in the 99th percentile feels good to you, and that's what you want, then we're absolutely stand ready to help. Right. If you're like, no, I'm really cool with being average because that's where I want to be, then don't waste your time or hours, because that's just not what we do. It's just not what we do. And so right now, the shift, we've made, just like I'm telling, talking to your listeners about, sometimes you have to just reframe things. We were doing a lot of huge projects. And at this point, with a lot of other things going on, for me, it's more about serving as an advisor as opposed to coming in and rearranging the world. It's like, if your world needs rearranging, we can send you to some people that'll help you with that.
Right.
But it's really to be able to talk to someone who's done this. And when I've had people, we all have things that are easy for us and we don't appreciate them because we just, okay.
Yeah.
But
it's easy for us.
It's easy for you. But the number of people that have said to me says, your ability to cut right to the heart of something almost instantly with great clarity is amazing.
Right.
And I'm like, oh,
you have a good BS meter, so to speak.
Yeah. Well, but it's like, well, no, this is the thing that's causing, we're 8 layers up, but here's what's causing it. So we need to go deal with that root. And so for us now, it's really more about kind of having those conversations with kind of the key leaders around, here's what we see happening. Here's the things you kind of go need to play with now, rather than coming in and doing massive projects.
Right.
And the other thing that we do have, the framework is available on my website, but the other thing for your listeners is there's quizzes available for them. And there's 2 quizzes, one that says, hey, if you look at the framework, here are the things, the 3 areas where you're doing, you're rocking it. Then the next quiz, if you're bold and brave, is these are kind of biting us. We're not rocking these, and they're really holding us back. They're the drag.
We've got some pain points here.
Yeah, there are choke points. They're whatever you want to call them. And so it's after people have gone through those, if they want to have a conversation, and they're like, I really, really want to head this way. But I'm like, let's talk. You'll get some really good insights just from the feedback on the quiz. But it's obviously also helpful to talk to somebody, like me, who's like, this is my baby. And I can go, okay, here's a couple of other things you could try. So that's an offer for people that really want to do the work. If you're bored and have nothing else to do, I'm sorry, my time's more valuable, right?
Right.
But if it's something that you really want to move forward on, then that's an offer that we happily extend.
Right. And your website is reCalibrate.today, not .com, .today.
.com is not me, right? Let's take you somewhere else.
Right. And, so if people want to find you and connect with you, LinkedIn is a great place.
Yep. We're certainly on LinkedIn. The Cheryl at reCalibrate.today is a way to tag me directly as well. The book is available 2 ways. The hardback that you have is only available through my website.
Okay.
And because we live in an Amazon world, shipping's covered, all that good stuff. I've even got a guarantee on it. If you get it and don't love it, then money back.
I love it.
You can also get it through Amazon in a digital format. If you're like, no, I like my digital, thank you very much. Right. I have a bias for the hardcover because I'm just like, oh, it feels so good.
Yeah, it's very tactile. And this is a very tactile book, right?
Yes.
I don't mind reading business books on my Kindle or, whatever, because I'm like, whatever, but a book,
Yeah.
I want that, that
Yeah.
feeling, right?
And
Like,
it does have, yeah.
the heavy cover, the heavy
Yeah.
paper. I mean,
Sure,
all
yeah.
of those things.
So those depending on what people prefer, those are both out there
I
as well.
love it. I love it. Well, Cheryl, oh my gosh, I feel like we've just scratched the surface on this, and so it would be fun to have you on again.
Oh, it'd be
And
awesome.
it's been a great conversation. I hope people have learned from it, which is always the goal.
Yeah.
People are like, to me, well, you've done this for 900 and you're 939, so almost
You're an amazing
950
woman,
episodes.
yeah.
What do I get out of it? I talk to cool people, right?
Yeah.
And more
'Cause
importantly,
I
I
get to
learn
pick.
something every time. And so that I think is
Yeah.
if I'm learning, I'm hoping that my listeners, my viewers are learning also. But until we have the opportunity to
Right.
have you on again, what is a final thought that you would like to leave everyone with?
I think right now, given the pulse of our world, I would tell people to really think long and hard about allowing themselves to continue to lead exhausted, right? That it really is to kind of look in the mirror and go, if things really feel, what are you permitting? Because if you're getting, I love the terminology of, and it's used a lot, kind of, it's a kind of a Christian parable, but it talks about what you're planting, what you're sowing is what you're going to reap. I'm not putting in grapes and getting out hay. Okay. And we forget that. And we too often, we want to do it anyway, but now I see the level, it's like the Iron Man thing, where you hit and it's like, it's out of sight. We're too quick to blame everybody else. And that's true of leaders as well. And when you choose to lead, you are taking the obligation to make some of the hard choices. And that includes setting direction. And that includes going, we don't do this here. When we would bring new people in, I would be very tactfully say, I'm being very tongue in cheek. I would say to them, you've been accepted into an amazing organization. And we have worked incredibly hard and diligently to have it be that way for everyone who we touch. We want to hear from you on day one, because that's when you come in going, why do y'all do it that way? I work somewhere else and they did this, or what about that? I said, do not hesitate, because we want to learn from you. At the same time, don't screw up who we are, because you will not be welcome to stay. And so if we don't have that recognition that as the leader, that is our job to hold that line and to create the conditions for that, then that's a major failure. And if you've just wanted to roll over and pull the covers back up, then maybe it's time for a break or something different. But it's also probably time to get someone outside of you, again, whether it's family, friend, whoever, to kind of go, here's what I'm kind of seeing from outside. But it really is understanding that what you're harvesting, you're planting. And we don't like that. It's much more comfortable to say, well, it's your fault. If you hadn't done that, then I wouldn't have this problem. Well, there's a lot of things that happened for you to have this problem. And maybe they were the final straw, right? But I had the gift of riding, was, in my opinion, one of the most gifted riders in the world. And at the time, I was teaching students, a lot of them were teenagers, for horseback riding. And this one of my students was getting really angry with her horse because her horse wasn't doing right. And this rider, his name is Arthur Kotas. And I said, if Arthur Kotas were riding your horse, would he be having this problem? And she's like, no. And I said, well, what does that tell you? It's me, right? And that's where I think a lot of us need to be, right? If it's really not okay, if you were running the organization, would the same thing be going on? If I were running the organization, right? Or the team or whatever. And so I really think we just need to be willing, and we have to carve out the space to have the energy to do that, right? Kind of reflection right now. But that would really be what I would tell people right now, because we're way too quick to point out there. And the problem is, number one, it's not true. And number two, when you're the cause of the problem, then I have no ability to fix it. I'm just your victim. And I take nothing away from people who are victims, because there are plenty. But in this specific instance, I'm talking about a really different, narrow, right? Because my first job was working with victims of violent crime. So please don't think I'm saying anybody who's a victim is lie. That's not what I'm saying. But in this case, when you're abdicating, you may be abdicating some responsibility because it's just, they, and that doesn't mean everybody's doing right. Back to your statement, we're not Pollyannas, but it really is, when you give away that ability to fix anything, that is a depressing and exhausting place to be. So that would be my buoyant statements right now, because I think people can climb out of it. I call it, the phrase I use, you have to be willing to jump the tracks, right? And the tracks are just, they're there and they're there and they're there, but it takes some effort to jump the tracks. And I think, people who are willing to listen to you and to other people that can help them already are miles ahead of people who don't. Because when I interviewed and I reached out to these leaders who were amazing, almost without fail, I don't know if I have anything to offer. I'm still learning. I mean, that's the attitude we all need, because there is always more to learn. I love every conversation I get because I'm like, oh, that was really cool, right? That was an insight I didn't, that's awesome. I'm going to add it, So that's an amazing thing. So I think it's that attitude of constantly learning, and don't give away your ability to fix things by blaming other people for them.
Oh my gosh. I love it. I can't wait to talk again because you have such great insight. Well, I'm Deb Creer. I've been speaking with Cheryl Lynn Mobley. She is the CEO and founder of reCalibrate. And until next time, everyone have a great day.
Tune in for our next program for even more trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. The Business Power Hour, hosted by Deb Creer, is proud to be part of the C-Suite Network.